Who were you before you lost your wild self?
That's what we're helping you explore on the Tend Her Wild podcast.
Through questions and tools around how best to listen to your inner voice,
rewild ourselves, and live the most authentic life where we thrive instead of survive.
I'm Betsy.
And I'm Kate.
And we're so glad you've joined us for this episode. Hello, Tender Wild podcast listeners. We are thrilled today to have Rosie'e Acosta joining us. Rosie is a mindfulness teacher at Headspace, the best-selling author of You Are Radically Loved, a mental health coach, speaker, podcast host, and also the associate producer of Balance, a perimenopause journey that is currently on Apple TV, I believe, and Amazon Prime. Is that right, Rosie?
Yes. And it's also on Plex for free if you want to watch it. It just has commercials.
Okay. Great. And Kate and I just finished it this week, and we are on fire about all things perimenopause.
Yes, we are.
We cannot wait to talk about it.
On fire would be the right word.
It's just kind of the right term.
Literally.
Literally. Rosie's born and raised in East LA, and she's currently pursuing her master's in clinical psychology as well. So she's doing beautiful work in the world, and we can't wait to learn more about you and your journey. So welcome, Rosie.
Welcome.
Well, thank you both for having me and for, just providing a space that we need so badly right now.
Yes, we do. We always like to start with our guests learning a little bit more about your first 10 years. We have found that there's a little through line that usually shows up. So is there some memorable or some moments in your childhood or how you were raised that really stick out for you as kind of an important part of your upbringing that may be even showing up in your work today?
I mean, that really, it's so interesting that you've chosen the first 10 years because, I mean, really I feel like it shapes so much of our choices and our lives. And I know it has for me. So yeah, I mean, the first 10 years of my life were really tumultuous. I grew up in a really chaotic environment. My parents are both immigrants and they came to LA and they lived in a, small 2-bedroom apartment with 12 people. And it was obviously crowded, but it was also, it's like, that's kind of what you did, everybody had everybody worked 2 jobs. And at the time when I was really little, it was kind of the normal thing. But as I got a little older, and I'm saying older, like 8, 9, 10, the neighborhood that we were in started to really change. We started to see a rise in gang violence, and it started to just get really chaotic. And my parents actually separated when I was 10, and I have an older sister who's 3 years older than I am, and they ended up separating us. And I won't get into the particulars of how that decision was made, but essentially they had us both choose, which is like so shitty, but it's fine. We've gone to many years of therapy, and clearly I'm still not over it. But So that really informed my perception.
Did you go with dad or mom?
I'm sorry?
Did you go with dad or mom?
Oh, I stayed with my dad.
You stayed with your dad.
Yeah. So my grandmother, my dad's mom, was our primary caretaker, which in a lot of Hispanic families, like that's kind of what you do, like you have, different generations and under one household sort of helping raise kids and cooking and cleaning. And so my grandma she was really both our mom and our dad for my sister and I. And so for me, it wasn't necessarily that I chose my dad. It was like I was choosing to be with my caretaker. So yeah, that was the choice that I made. And, it was amazing until it wasn't, in the neighborhood that we were in. And yeah, it was interesting to sort of live in that experience and see how it really helped shape the decisions in my life, specifically around mental health and helping people that were underserved or underprivileged, and choosing a path that focused on creating tools and creating different ways for people to, yeah, like overcome adversity and believe in themselves essentially.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, and I was thinking about you as a mindfulness coach and all the work you do to help people find calm and inner peace and growing up in kind of, maybe you said, I think you said, kind of this chaotic environment, that those tools that you maybe were using yourself, you're now teaching others.
Yeah, and I think that that's always been the part that I've really leaned heavier on, especially the last, handful of years since being postmenopausal, right? And going through that really, it took me back to my teenage years and having PTSD, because everything that I lived in my childhood essentially came out and really expressed itself in my adolescence. I was a very, very troubled child. I was, a delinquent, and I got arrested several times, and I was sort of on this downward spiral because of the upbringing that I'd had. And when you're in that environment and everybody else is doing the same thing, you don't really think there's anything different. And so it was during that time that I got introduced to yoga and meditation, and it was more of a philosophy rather than a physical practice. But it really, I was really into like anything that was not Catholicism,
Mm.
Mm.
because that's how right. Kate's like,
She gets it.
Yeah.
hello, recovering,
Recovering. Yep.
recovering Catholic as well.
Yes, I see
Um,
you.
but it was really interesting to me, this idea, this philosophy that, you know, yoga is this way of living that connects the mind, body, and spirit connection. And I just loved that. I thought that it was so cool and
Yeah.
so interesting. And, I was really into like tarot card readings and horoscopes and numerology. And, you're a teen, you're just kind
Yep.
of into anything that's not what you grew up with. And so in that same path, I was I was working on becoming a better person as a 15-year-old.
Mm.
And I started to just really dive into these different, Eastern modalities, and mindfulness came in shortly thereafter. And it really gave me the ability to notice what was happening, right? So like the idea of mindfulness as a whole is the practice of paying attention, right? And being in the present moment, and, being able to be in your experience without judgment. And all of those things were really fascinating to me, because I'm like, how do you do that? Like, this is
Yeah.
one of the
No one
most
teaches
difficult
Yeah.
us
things,
this.
No.
No one teaches us
right?
this early on.
And which, by the way, I think it should be taught in schools as young
Agreed.
as,
Absolutely.
really
Because it's so
young.
natural for them to learn it when they're
Yeah.
young.
Right.
And yeah, and that was the framework that really sort of helped me change my life. And I just sort of followed that pathway. I just followed the
Mm.
trail, and it just continued to unravel itself. And the further I went down that path, the farther away I became from my environment and the choices that I was making, and I felt like I'm just like everybody else I grew up around. Like, we're not different. We're not made of anything different. Why did I make it out, and
Mm.
why didn't my friends? Like, what is that? What is the difference? And that's what helped me sort of choose my path. And I wanted to help people, and I wanted to really focus on teaching people these tools, or giving them books to read, or
Yeah.
helping people change their mindset. And it just kind of turned into a
Yeah.
career.
Yeah.
It's powerful. So you alluded to the fact that the PTSD and some of the challenges from early in your life started to come back up when you went through menopause, and you went through an early menopause much
Mhm.
earlier than maybe is even an average age. So, will you take us on that journey with you? Because as I listened to your 4-part series, Balance, I realized that my childhood trauma didn't surface until I was going through perimenopause and I didn't know it. I thought it was an autoimmune disorder. And I was just telling
Yeah.
Kate, I'm like, it was perimenopause. And no one told me. And that's when my body was like, oh, you need to remember this, Betsy.
Yeah.
So, will you kind of help us make that link and tell us your personal story of going into perimenopause early?
Well, I mean, first of all, I see you and I totally get it. And it's one of the most challenging experiences, I think. I always joke that I always say, I thought that the hardest thing I was going to go through in my life was getting out of East LA and like not dying, but it was actually perimenopause. I
Yeah.
think that for
Oh,
me was the most challenging, horrific, um, dark experience I've ever had. And I talk, I mean, now I talk about every day. I'm getting DMs, I'm getting emails, I'm getting text messages. I mean, I'm happy to talk about it because I feel like when I was going through it, and I did start early, um, it's been like the crusade that I'm on now, specifically with the docuseries being out and more people finding it and watching it and resonating with a lot of the stories. But to back to your question, Betsy, I want to, give people a little bit of context because I did start early. And the reason why it was missed is because it was happening simultaneously as my partner and I were going through a fertility journey. So at 35, we started, we'd already been together for, I don't remember, a long time. We've been together for like 21 years at this point, but at the time, we were, kind of having these conversations like, are we going to do this? Are we not going to do this? Like, let's just try and just see. And so we got pregnant like right away, within the first 2 months. And then I had a miscarriage and it was really sad. But I was, we kind of went through the motions of it. And we went to the doctor, and the doctor, said, like, which I know that they're trying to change the terms for this, but that I was a geriatric pregnancy at
right.
that point, right? So these things happen all the time. And, he tried to, give me some assurances and just keep trying. Sometimes it takes people up to a year. So, just keep doing what you're doing. And so, we navigated that. And 8 months after that, so just after my 36th birthday, I got pregnant again, and the same thing happened. So this time, the miscarriage happened at almost 8 weeks.
Mm.
So it was a little more challenging, physically, emotionally, mentally. Obviously, my hormones, everything was just kind of all over the place. And I started to just feel like something was off. It just didn't feel like things were normal. Went to the doctor again. Everything's normal. You're fine. You're fine. You're fine.
Mm.
And we waited another, and this is how time goes, people that go through fertility journeys. I'm just like, oh my God, it's such a process,
Yeah.
to be able to go through this. So we waited another 6 months and then we tried again. Um, and then this time, you know, things were sort of shifting and moving, and I was missing periods at that point. And, we just kept chalking it up to, oh, you've had 2 miscarriages. Like,
Stress.
Right.
yeah, it's stress. And I was doing all of the things. Oh my goodness. I was doing IVs and the acupuncture and the herbs. And I was like doing and I was eating so clean, and I was measuring my protein, and I wasn't, and, I don't drink, normally it's not part of my lifestyle. So it was like I was essentially a McVegan, and I was very diligent about my sleep, and things were off. And so we waited a year after. So after again my 37th birthday at this point, we decided to try again. And I started to kind of get a little nervous because I'm like, oh, I'm going to be 40 soon. Like, should we go to fertility doctor, that specializes, because this is starting to feel like, again, something's off. And by the way, in the interim of those essentially three years, I was getting hot flashes. My sleep was getting interrupted. There was all kinds of hormonal perimenopausal issues happening. And by the third time I got pregnant, at the same time, miscarriage happened. And at that point, I'm like, I need a break. I can't do this anymore. It's so hard on my body because, it's like I'm gaining weight, my breasts, like everything is sort of shifting and moving, and like your body is, coordinating itself to have a child. And so once that happened, I needed a break. And, I said to my partner, I said, I can't do this right now. Like I need my body to go back to being healthy. And for the last 3 years, it's been this ongoing, like pregnant, not pregnant, pregnant, not pregnant. And so it created so much anxiety and stress. And so we did that. And then COVID happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so once we made that choice at the beginning of 2020, we had gone to see a fertility specialist and we had done all the testing, and he got tested. We checked everything, and we decided, because of the pandemic, we're like, let's just wait. Like, let's wait to see what's going to happen if the world's going to end. Like, maybe this was a blessing in disguise. Like, let's just leave things as they are. And it wasn't until the end of 2020 that we started to feel like, okay, let's go back and revisit this. Maybe and by the way, we had continued to loosely try.
Yeah.
I was missing periods. I was, still having all the symptoms. And then a year after that last period, in 2020, it just, like, my period just never came
Stopped.
back. And so by the time we went back to the doctor, they had said that I had a low ovarian reserve, or diminished ovarian reserve. And so they weren't comfortable retrieving any eggs because they didn't think it would be successful. And so then we were going through that process. And shortly thereafter, because these things take months, like, to do and to test, they said that I was perimenopausal. And shortly thereafter that, it had been a year since that period, that final period I had. And so that was it. Shop was closed,
Wow. Can I ask, was there any point in those 3 or 4 years that perimenopause even came up until?
Never.
Oh.
Not once. Never. Not once. Not one doctor. And I went to 3 different doctors, and I have health insurance, but all of my in-network people were like, you're normal, everything's normal. And I kept going out of network, and I kept going to this specialist and that specialist. And I mean, we spent I want to say a small fortune, but it was a lot, probably as much as my entire grad school has cost.
And not only financially, but emotionally. And
oh yeah,
the, time and so
much. It was hard. It was really, really hard, and still not getting any answers. And obviously you've seen the docuseries. I didn't go into depths of the experience, but I shared enough to the audience, to people, to let them know that by the time they figured out what was happening, it was, it was too late, unfortunately. And I wish that back when I was 35, when I got pregnant that quickly, I wished somebody would have said to me, like, maybe freeze your eggs, or like go through this, do a round of, whatever, at least to do some sort of fail safe, I guess. But we didn't get that chance.
Yeah. Well, and kind of just turning to the documentary and the series, there's such the medical inequality and the misinformation and non-education of even doctors of it being, the idea that perimenopause starts earlier. I think that's what both Betsy and I have felt this kind of rage over the last couple of days thinking about how many women's lives are
Oh,
impacted by
yeah.
this. And that's why it's such a beautiful docuseries, because you hear the real life stories, and it's starting to it's almost like watching the dots be connected in real
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
We had dots connect for us.
Yes.
Watching it.
Yes.
Like, oh, that was going on for me.
In
and
my
no one
40s.
In my 40s.
Wow.
Yeah.
It wasn't an autoimmune stuff. I was going through perimenopause and no
Yeah.
one knew or
Yep.
helped. So what I'm kind of blown away by, Rosie, is you were seeing doctors who had to have been measuring your hormones.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh,
But you know why it was dismissed? Because I was too young.
You were too young.
Yeah, they said it was stress, that the reason why there was some sort of abnormality was just stress, to just sleep.
Because, of course, no one's really studied women.
Yeah.
So we don't actually know the full range. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the kicker that did it for me right before my 40th birthday was, instead of giving me a hormone replacement therapy or even a birth control, which they ended up doing afterwards, which is when we started shooting the docuseries, which is a whole nother topic that I don't necessarily want to get into, because it just is going to irritate me. And actually it might be good, because what doctors do, they give you birth control, right? And so birth control is 3 to 4 times more estrogen and progesterone that your body needs, right? So that's their solve, right?
Mhm.
And so for me, when I went to the doctor and I was like, there's something wrong, I keep bursting into sweat. I do work on camera and I am drenched. My shirt is wet. Like, I can't work like this. Like, something's wrong,
Yeah.
that there's something going on. And they just prescribed me antidepressants. They're like, you're
Yeah.
just stressed, you're depressed.
Yeah.
Here's some antidepressants.
Yeah. Well,
Wow.
the stat that blew me away too is that, the number of divorces that happen between 45 and 55, and the mental health issues for women.
Suicide
And I'm
rate.
thinking the suicide rates.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of blown away by how have we missed this and how many things can be explained by perimenopause, and that it's something that is treatable. We can't even say treatable, can we? Because it's not a disorder.
No,
It
it's
can
not.
be it can be
Improved.
helped. It can be
Helped.
improved.
Yeah, it can be. And the thing is, like, and it is essentially a treatment, but our bodies aren't going to make those hormones naturally. So we need to have that exogenous support, because if we don't, we have all these other health conditions that it puts us more at risk for osteoporosis, heart disease, cognitive decline, every area of our life. I mean, we are impacted hormonally in our entire system. And so when we don't have the hormones that we need, my interest right now is like that connection. What it's the number one killer of women is heart disease. What is the number one hormone that heart loves is estrogen.
Yeah.
So to me, I'm like, well, can we not just focus a little bit more on these issues that we need to be educated about, that we need to learn about, that we need to talk about, and not create so much stigma around it? Because going back, Betsy, to what you were saying about the mental health, you know, uh, uh, issues that we encounter, especially when we are in this phase, the divorce rates, the things that begin to change. And going back to your point earlier about being a teenager and then going through perimenopause, those same fluctuations are happening.
Come
And
back.
so,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, I mean, I was just having this conversation with Tori about, I'm sure she's fine with me sharing. My older sister is just starting her journey. And I mean, man, I see this. I see all the signs, and I'm just like being very as gentle as I can, because I remember being in that space, and I remember people telling me, "Oh, just calm down," or this, or "You're overreacting," or blah 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 blah. Like it's not a big deal, and I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" I mean, talking about divorce. I mean, I never wanted to divorce this man more than when I was in perimenopause. I mean, I was like, "You're bothering me. Everything about you right now, the way you're breathing, like." I can you move somewhere else? Like, I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear you chew.
Yeah.
Like it,
Yes.
you know what I mean? I'm just like, like get away. But then I would have the conversation I was having yesterday, it reminded me about how jealous I got during that time. Like,
Ooh.
like jealous, like I've been with this person my entire life, essentially, and I'm not necessarily a jealous person,
Yeah.
but suddenly it took me back to being in high school. Like,
Yeah.
do you guys remember being in high school
Oh,
and
yeah.
like, do you know that like
Mhm.
jealousy of somebody that you like is talking to somebody else? Oh my God. I
Yeah.
was like a psychopath. It was really off-putting, we had this huge blowout fight just because he was talking to somebody on the phone. And I was like, "Why are you flirting with her?" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "You're being way too nice." And he's like, "I'm nice to everybody." And I'm like, "You're being a little too nice to her. Do you know her?"
Mm.
And he's just like, "This lady is just trying to help me get like this paperwork." He's like, "I'm just trying to be nice to her." But it was that intensity of insecurity,
Yeah.
right? Like that feeling of something is happening. I feel insecure. I feel like I don't feel good in my body.
Yeah.
Everything hurts. Everything, I'm dry everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like I just don't feel good,
Yeah.
and one of the things that has come up lately has been, yeah, like I went through it young. I understand, I feel really grateful to have gone through perimenopause at that age, because I'm going to be 43 here in a week. And I'm like super grateful. I have a lot of friends that are in their 50s and they're just like, "I can't believe you went through it so young." And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's done. Like, it's over now. Like, I get to enjoy the rest of my life and it's amazing. Like, I don't
Yeah.
have to deal with all that stuff that comes later, So I
Can I
think, oh,
Can I
please,
share a
please.
quote from your thing?
Yeah.
Because I want to stop. I got to put a pin in that for a minute about all the great stuff that comes in menopause. Because in the docu-series, there are two doctors who say it. And I love
Yeah.
this so much. I wrote it down. You have to look forward to menopause. There's no PMS, no cramps, no pads, no tampons. You can wear white anytime. You have great sex. You can think clearly and you live longer. And then the other doctor says you gain the superpower where there's no fucks left to give. Right.
Yes.
And so to
Yes.
hear
Yes.
this, right, as women, it's like something to look forward to. Like there are great things versus I think what we've all been conditioned is like, oh, life goes down the
Yeah.
shitter. There's nothing left.
And it's a third of our life.
Left. Yes.
It
To be in our power.
Yes, which is incredible.
Yeah.
So
And I
shift
love that. I think it's so powerful. I think it's amazing. And I don't have any fucks left. I mean, and I love that. And I think it's so beautiful. And I really do love the experience of aging. I always have, since I was little, because I just was so obsessed. My grandmother passed away a couple years ago, and she was, like I said, my greatest caretaker. And I just remember just when I was little thinking and looking at her and all my aunts and, all these like elder indigenous women and being jealous and being like, "I want to have long white hair like they do.
Mm.
And I want to look like that. And I want my face to look like hers. And I want to be able to, you know, have that experience." And I pray that I get to have as long of a life as she did, but unfortunately there was a lot of cognitive decline in my grandmother's life, and a lot of, you know, uh not not great care, because women, especially at that age, especially women of color, don't get the type of care that they need. And, as you saw in the docuseries, women of color's symptoms are impacted earlier, and sometimes, they're more pervasive.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it's something that, again, I'm grateful for experiencing early on, and I just love that we get to have this second phase of life, or whatever you want to call it. But it's so scary for a lot of women, and I totally understand. And I'm always such a huge proponent with all my friends that are in perimenopause now, including my sister, to just give them as much care and love and
Yeah.
support. Be like, it's okay, it's gonna get better, I promise. Like, it's just, you have to just go through this really, like, shitty terrain for, look, you
10
don't have to go
years
yeah,
sometimes.
but
I
you
don't
don't
know.
I mean, if you are somebody that chooses to get on hormone replacement therapy, which obviously I didn't for the first couple years, then I did, and I thought HRT was birth control. That's a whole separate thing. But then when I got on HRT specific to me, it just brought me back to myself. Like, I started to feel like myself. I'm like, oh, there I am. She's been gone for a couple of years,
We
right?
had the same
We
thing.
did.
Did you? And so what was
Yeah.
what can you both share your experiences with that? Like, what was it
Yeah.
like prior? And did you both decide to take HRT?
We've been on this journey together, really, because we've been
We've been doing
friends.
this podcast for 4 years, and I remember we had a woman on who's a photographer, and we were talking about it. She looks at me, she's like, "You're not on HRT. What is wrong with you? Get on HRT." But in a funny way.
She's like, "I've never felt better. You got to do it now. Call
And
right now."
yeah, I realized that all those years of insomnia that I thought was due to the stress of my marriage and my life, and would force me to sleep in the basement. I'm like, that was menopause,
Mhm.
right? Because I wasn't getting hot flashes. Everyone gets hot flashes. I wasn't having any hot, but I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
And I just, thought, well, it's clear stress. And so
Yeah.
I'm having a lot of ahas now of like, oh, that was all perimenopause. But yeah, I feel like myself now that I'm on HRT.
So about 3 years ago, we had gotten together to watch a movie for a guest we were having. We had sushi. Betsy left my house, and I went and drew a bath, and I leaned over the bathtub, and all of a sudden I felt like something had happened in my chest. And I sat down. No one, my husband and son were gone, and I sat down in this chair. I'm like, I don't know what is happening, and my heart just raced. I couldn't get a hold of my husband, and so I called Betsy, who was almost home at that point, and I said, "I think I might be having a heart attack." And she drove back. She stayed on the phone with me the whole time. I was able to get downstairs and get in her car, and the hospital was not far, probably 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And she took me in the ER, and I at this point was like, I mean, my heart rate was in the 180s. I was like, something, I'm going to die. And it was full waiting room full of people. And you were pretty like, she needs to get back. And they did take me back then and checked for a heart attack, and it was not. And then I went into, triage area and waited and waited. And my husband came. I was there until 3 a.m, and they ran a bunch of tests, and they showed inflammation. It showed maybe an infection, white cell count, but they said that your heart is checking out fine. And it led to this battery of heart tests for the next 2 months. They had me going through treadmill tests and all that. Not one time at 50 years old did anybody suggest this could be menopause. Not once. And that was so traumatic. And then, sure, a couple of years ago, my mom had open heart surgery, and I know my grandfather died early of heart disease. So in my mind, that's what was happening. Like it was my genetics, but it wasn't. Now that I look back,
And after watching your docuseries, I was like, all of that was,
Mhm.
my trauma was coming in at 40. You were like, that was my heart stuff. So
Mhm.
I just want you to know, Rosie, the lights came on for
It
us
really
by
did.
watching the docuseries.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that you both went through
But I
it's
think
a shitty
every woman,
experience.
don't you think,
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
has
Like
their story?
there is going to be a shift. Things are going to change, but the way I like to see it is, we don't build a muscle by just keeping it stagnant. It's an opportunity for us to grow and to evolve, and I think these conversations give women the knowledge and maybe the fortitude to continue to forge their way forward. And maybe it's messy, but it's still a way forward, and it is so much better. It is so much better. And Kate, I also have a family history of heart issues. I have a heart murmur.
Me too. Yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Heart club.
Yeah.
My dad also had a quadruple bypass surgery. And so I was having really severe palpitations. I did the whole thing too. Heart holster monitor, like
Yep.
the whole experience. And yeah, they did not say, get on hormone replacement therapy.
No.
You're just like,
No.
you're fine. There's nothing out of the ordinary.
And we need this information in our 30s. We don't
Oh,
need
yeah.
it. We don't need it in our 50s. It's too late. And that's when I was getting it finally. And I like your idea that really you're going through puberty for a second time.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
like
it really is a
puberty.
second adolescence.
Yeah.
It
And
really is.
and it explains, like, when I think about, when I was 13, 14, I was thinking I was really jealous. Like some of those goes up and down. Like I wasn't rational all the time. Like this really does mirror that time frame.
Yeah.
And
all the shit you didn't deal with when you were teenagers,
coming
boom,
back.
it comes back around for us to
Yes.
flush out of our system so we can turn into the wise, wild women
Right.
that we actually are.
Yeah. And I love that because you're, yes, number one, correct all the things. I'm like fighting with my mom and I'm just like, you did this and it pissed me off. And she's like, what is wrong with you? Like, you're almost 40 years old. And I'm like, it doesn't matter.
Working through some stuff.
Yeah, I'm working through some things. But yeah, it is really interesting how that we have that experience again. And I think again, it's a privilege to be able to still be alive and to have the experience of being able to go through that. So many people don't, and I do have a lot of empathy and really understand women at this stage specifically because there's a lot of grieving that happens during this time, right? Like there's a lot of grief. I mean, I really wanted to be a mother. Like I really wanted to have kids. And it didn't happen, And now it's like, of course, I get the answers like, oh, you can always adopt, you can get, try and do IVF, egg donor. And yes to all the things. And great. Still, I wanted to have my own child, So I feel like there is a grieving that happens when we enter this stage that we don't talk about enough. Uh, Last week, I was with a friend of mine who also saw the docuseries, who I hadn't talked to in 20 years. We used to work together, and she saw it. She saw like I posted it on Facebook, which I'm never on Facebook, by the way. So I just don't ever go on there. And she had reached out, and she happens to work really close to my house, which is very strange because we grew up, in East Los Angeles. And we happened to, go have a coffee together. And she was an actress, back 20 years ago. And now, she got a divorce during COVID, and she's dating now. She's, going to be 50 this year. And she's going into a different phase of her life. But she said something really like poignant to me. She brought up a topic that she thought was interesting. She said, I worked my entire life, my entire essentially life for the 40 years. It was all about my looks and being in front of a camera and being on stage and counting every calorie and making sure that I looked a certain way and dating the right people and making sure I was photo ready and, all of those things. And she said, now, she's a mom, she's, her kids are out of the house now, and she's dating, she's on her next phase of life. But one of the things that I thought was interesting, because we're talking about this grieving experience, and she's like, I don't feel like I got to grieve that version of me, the version of me that I didn't think about. I'd walk into a coffee shop or I'd walk into a place and people would look at me, and she wasn't trying to sound vain or self-indulgent, but she's like, people don't look at me anymore, you know? And that's really hard. And she said, and I can't even believe I'm saying this out loud. And it was really like poignant
Yeah.
because there is a grieving there that happens too for somebody that their entire career, their entire life was about an aesthetic, right? How they looked, their superficial layer, and they no longer have that. And so there's a grieving process that happens there too, and yeah, like we were both crying, we were both having these conversations, and it was beautiful. It was a great, beautiful, conversation, but it really struck me because that's one of the other things that I feel like gets, looked over with this grieving process of certain things, like I don't know how I would feel. I have the same partner and he's not going anywhere. He better not go anywhere. But I only have to care about what that person thinks I look like. You know what I mean? And fortunately that person, loves me and we have a great relationship. But I think that component, when I was going through this fertility stuff and perimenopause, like I was 40 pounds heavier and I had no libido and I hated the way I felt. And I think about, I wasn't even 40 yet,
Yeah.
and I was like, this is it. Like, this is my life. Like, this is what it's going to be. I have to just get into it, like this is just going to be how I'm going to feel forever, you
Mm.
know? And I could see how that mental component can begin to decline, why so many women struggle with that piece of it too,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, we perform most of our lives for others, right? We're in the performance mode.
Yeah.
And then suddenly there is the freedom and liberation of letting go of the need to perform for everyone else. But there is also grief.
Yeah.
I had grief just knowing that I'd been performing for the first
Yeah.
40 years. I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that I had
Yeah.
not been living for me for all those years. So
What happens with, can you both answer this question? Like what shifted and what does it feel like to have that experience now, to think back, like, not that we can't go and change the past, but are there things that you wish you would have spent a little less time thinking about?
oh,
God, I wish I would have spent way less time trying to please everyone around me and, do everything right so as not to piss anyone off, but to make sure everybody still loved me. Classic people pleaser, right?
yeah.
God, it was such a waste of time. And now that I feel like I'm moving towards the other side here, it just like that your thing said, I have no fucks left to give. Don't have to care as much about other people's opinions of me. Not that they still don't come in from time to time, but
Yeah.
there's more freedom on the other side, as you said,
Oh,
Rosie.
yeah.
So much more freedom. We're a little more dried out, but we're way more free.
Just, I
Dry
know
freedom.
that's like the worst. I'm just like, but why? It just hurts, It's like
Yeah.
the dryness. But there's things for that. But
Yeah.
side note, we can offline about that.
Yeah.
Kate,
Yeah.
please.
So I would say same thing. I was very much a people pleaser. My experience really was kind of around my purpose, what I was doing with my life. And when I look back and I had at 20 I knew myself better, right? And I knew what I wanted, but society's like you should want this.
She went and became a lawyer.
I was a lawyer, my first career.
She was meant to be a therapist.
And I had a red flag the first day of law school. All the lights were going off inside my body. Like, what are you doing here? And I ignored my inner voice for so long until I had this vision that, kind of this desire that would crop up about every 5 years about working for myself and going out on my own and shifting. And I would tamper it back down because that, I've got kids at home. I've got to get them through college. And when I finally jumped, it was like every part of my being was like, finally, you are doing what you're supposed to always was supposed to do. And there was great freedom in that for me. So mine was really about like my calling and just ignoring what my calling was for so long and kind of the windy way I found it. Oh, and this podcast had a lot to do with it. I quit my job, my CEO job, about a year into the podcast. And I think finding my voice and doing this process of interviewing other women is what finally,
Freed
I mean,
you.
we would say that. We'd say, God, look what she's doing. And when we share our stories with each other, it gives us the strength to follow our own instincts, I think.
Yeah. So that's why we're really grateful to you, Rosie,
Mhm.
for sharing about menopause and your journey. And it like opened some new locks in both of
Oh,
us.
yeah.
So
Everyone needs to see this docuseries.
we're very aware of our time, and we want to make sure we get our last question
Yeah.
in because we ask this to all of our guests. And I think about your journey. You in many ways this wild woman archetype who takes us back to our natural essence, and we found that it happens a lot for women around this middle age time, which I'm sure is in alignment with perimenopause. So Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who wrote the seminal book Women Who Run with the Wolves, that's really the what this podcast is inspired by. And in this book, she talks about there are 4 doors that women can go through to enter this phase of being a wild woman. And we want to know which door you went through.
So if you have an old story, that is a door. If you have a deep scar, that is a door. If you love the sky and the water so much you can almost not bear it, that is a door. And if you yearn for a deeper life, a sane life, a full life, that is a door. So, do one or more of those doors resonate with you?
I think I think for me, it's definitely the yearning for a deeper life.
Mm.
Yeah. I think that going through menopause early, it challenged my identity in a way that, I mean, it challenged my identity, my relationship, my body, my spiritual practice. I mean, it really, I always say, I'm like, it humbled every area of my life. And I think I think that the fourth door, the yearning for a deeper life, has been a result of this experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you are a beautiful example of someone who's really turned pain into purpose. And this docuseries is kind of your next project in that. And so I would just encourage everyone to watch. I think we are entering a phase where women are going to demand education. We're going to demand research. We are no longer going to sit on the sidelines of our own health. And so I think this project is a real step toward that.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. And
Thank you.
I do wanna just acknowledge the filmmakers of the docuseries, my friends, the 2 Jane monks,
Yeah.
Sadhvi Sadali Shri and Sadhvi Anubhuti, and they are just incredible, authentic, loving humans doing some really amazing work, clearly. And I mean, I would have never been a part of this project had, they not been a part of my life. So I'm truly, truly grateful to them for, creating this movement, because that's what it is. It's a movement. And thank you both for your support and for watching it and for sharing your personal stories as well. I mean, to me, it's very apparent that these conversations need to
Mhm.
happen. I think we need to continue to have them as much as we can and just, be here for each other.
Absolutely. And where can people find you, Rosie?
Yeah, they can, I would say anywhere. I mean, they can go to rosieacosta.com or radicallylove.com. It goes to the same website. Everything's there. My Substack's there, I have articles or different resources. I'm on Instagram, but mostly everything that you would like to connect with me for or with is on my website. So
Great.
Thank you so much
Thanks
for
for
this
your time. It's
conversation.
lovely.
Beautiful.
So good to meet you, Rosie.
Yes.
you too. Thank you both so much for having me and for doing this, for having this community. How amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us today. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Come back and rewild with us again next week.